Iowa State just had its best season ever. Not because they won the Pop Tarts Bowl, but kind of because they won the Pop Tarts Bowl. That's the first time the Cyclones have ever notched 10 wins in the history of Iowa State football. They haven't won a conference championship in over a century, and they can do it again come 2025 for a couple of reasons. First of all, you have your head coach and quarterback returning, Matt Campbell, Rocco Becht, and I like both of those guys. They have been a really good tandem for the Cyclones over the last couple of seasons. But there is going to be a fair amount of pressure placed on the shoulders of Rocco Becht here. He's losing not one, but 2,000-yard receivers. There are only a handful of programs in the country that produce multiple thousand-yard seasons from wide receivers. That's not an easy thing to do. Not just because your quarterback has to probably at least throw for 2,500 to 3,000 yards or so, but you've got to have dynamic playmakers on the edge. So they lose a couple of guys there. Those are going to be hits. But Penn State is a little bit of a comparison here. And I like Rocco Becht sometimes in the college game, certainly in the Big 12, more than I like Drew Aller at times in the Big 10. Now, who's the best quarterback in the Big 10? Tune into the Big 10 squad, which will show up on this feed later today to find out where that discussion lands exactly. But Rocco Becht has proven himself incredibly capable going into his third year, started as a true freshman. We know what he is at this point. He's one of the few known commodities at quarterback in college football. There are more of those, it feels like, in the Big 12 than there are in, say, the SEC or the Big 10, where there are major questions all over the place. But you bring back Rocco Becht, you give yourself a certain floor of production that I expect you to be able to attain if everything else is going right. But the other reason that Iowa State reminds me of Penn State is not just because their head coach, who's proven to be good, is back. Their quarterback, who's proven to be good, is back. They're bringing back their two leading rushers from last year as well. Dynamic tandem. This was a really good offense. So Iowa State last season gets to the Big 12 championship game and it all goes wrong. And you know what? You can hold blowouts against a team if you would like in a big game setting. But did you watch the Super Bowl or several other NFL playoff games? It happens. It just does. And that's okay. So I don't hold it against the Cyclones here, which brings me to their schedule. One of the most fascinating in all of the Big 12 for 2025. They start the season off with an absolute bang. I mean, home run, this is fun. I can't wait. One of the marquee games early in the season. Iowa State plays Kansas State. Now, it's in Dublin, Ireland. I don't know what we're doing here. I mean, anytime you have two teams that combine for 20 wins the year prior, Iowa State had 11 and Kansas State had 9, and you put them on the same field to begin the season, there's no tune-up opportunity, right? That comes the following week for Iowa State. They play South Dakota. Then they've got, of course, the Cyhawk game. I mean, who doesn't love a good Cyhawk battle? It's great every year. And that was an early turning point for Iowa State this past season because they went to Iowa City, knocked off the Hawkeyes, and all of a sudden you looked around and went, wait a minute. Wait, this Iowa State team, they're pretty good. That was a really big win, and it flipped. Iowa was ranked, then Iowa State was ranked, and all of a sudden you looked up at the end of the year. Iowa State, thanks to tiebreakers, gets in at 7-2 into the Big 12 championship game. But that is a pretty firm start to the year, and we'll know right away just how good Iowa State can be, but their whole season won't be defined necessarily in those first 3 games. But what we'll know is if they're able to take a step forward. They've got a lot of returning production on defense, particularly in the secondary, but a couple linebackers as well. If they're able to win both of those games, you better take Iowa State seriously. They should be a preseason at least top 20 team. If Spencer's poll came out, Iowa State would probably be a preseason top 15 team because there just aren't that many teams in the country, as I mentioned, that can say, yeah, we're bringing back a quarterback who we know is good. Who's my favorite in the ACC? Clemson. Why? Cade Klubnik is there. Again, same OC, same head coach, third straight year. How many schools have the same starting quarterback in the last 3 seasons going into 2025, that year included? How many? Count them up. They are few and far between at the Power 4 level. So You start Kansas State, then you get a tune-up against South Dakota before the Cyhawk game. Then Arkansas State, which is on the road, curiously enough. Don't know that I completely understand that. Then they host Arizona. And the interesting thing about Arizona is the rapid pressure that has suddenly been placed upon the Wildcats head coach, Brent Brennan, who came in when Jed Fish departed for Washington, took a bunch of players with him, took a couple more with him after this past season as well. It's not an easy job. No head coach that's ever won at Arizona has been, boom, immediate turnaround. Jed Fish wasn't that kind of guy. Kevin Sumlin never got it turned around. Rich Rodriguez won there eventually, but it's not a place where you go and have the right coach and boom, suddenly you win 10 games. No, I don't see it that way. And yet, Arizona sees themselves that way because he missed a bowl game this year, which was worse than I thought they would be. And lo and behold, he's going to face serious pressure going into next season. But Iowa State will be favored in that game. At Cincinnati, Iowa State will be favored in that game. Doesn't mean they'll win, just means they'll be favored. That's all. Then they go at Colorado, back-to-back road games. That's challenging. That's not exactly what you'd love to see if you're a Cyclone fan. But overall, that's kind of the lone difficult stretch of games from a scheduling standpoint is you go on the road back-to-back weeks. There's no bye tossed in there either. It's October 4th at Cincinnati, October 11th at Colorado. But overall, this road schedule for Iowa State is not incredibly brutal. The neutral site game against Kansas State, which is a Big 12 game, by the way, in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, that's a big game. There's no doubt about it. But then the Big 12 slate kind of eases you into things. Arizona, don't know if they're great. Cincinnati, they're okay. Colorado, pullback team. BYU, questions, should be good, but you have them and Arizona State at home in consecutive weeks. That's the revenge game. If you want one game on the schedule for an Iowa State fan that I want you to circle and say that's the one you got to win the Arizona State game. You know, if you lose to BYU, well, it happened. Sure, that's the homecoming game and you prefer to emerge victorious there. But Arizona State is the game that if you win, it feels a little bit better because of the beatdown that was put upon the Cyclones in Arlington a year ago. The next week, they go at TCU. TCU's kind of a mystery team to me. They could be really good. They could be not good. They could be what they were last year, which is okay. And none of that would surprise me. And then you host Kansas and then go at Oklahoma State. Now, maybe the Cowboys are a bounce-back team, and maybe Kansas is a bounce-back team as well. But as far as Big 12 schedules go, I've seen tougher. I have seen tougher with far worse breaks. So you give me a strong returning core of production, a third-year starting quarterback with the same head coach, a couple of really talented running backs to come back and supplement that quarterback as well, and a schedule that is more than workable. And you're not going to have a tough time ramping up to the season mentally because, well, August 23rd, you best be ready to go abroad. Yeah, I like Iowa State quite a bit going into next year. But there's always the question with programs like Iowa State. Can they actually sustain success? Are they real? Can they do this? Can they do that? I guess we're about to find out. They finally hit 10 wins. They won 11 just for good measure because, well, why the heck not? But when you look at what Iowa State did last year and what they should be going into next year, it's not the first time they felt that way, but it is the first time you say, hey, just had the best season ever. Just won the Pop Tarts Bowl. What is greater college football lore than the Pop Tarts Bowl? I'm legitimately asking. I'm also asking for a reason why Iowa State won't be right back in the thick of the Big 12 title hunt come 2025.